some quick review tonight over the first 11 chapters that we've been looking at over the last few weeks. Just kind of going back and catching up and making sure we're all on the same page, and if there's any questions, we can address questions, comments, so on and so forth. So let's begin. When we open up the very first book, the very first chapter of Revelation, what's going on? What do we see? What's happening? Who's being introduced? What does the word revelation mean?
Reveal.
Reveal. So they're revealing. The revealing of who?
Jesus.
Jesus. The revealing of Jesus Christ. Alright, so people like to talk about His birth. People like to talk about His death. People like to talk about His resurrection. But a lot of times when they get to Revelation, they want to stop looking at what? What was His comments to all these churches that He's talking to? The underlying theme, what's He trying to get across? Even in times of difficulty?
Unity.
Do what?
Unity.
Unity. Even in times of difficulty, unity. Even in times of difficulty, persevere. Even in times of difficulty, unite. So the very first verse is very important. The introduction to this book is highly important to understanding so much of it. Because unto the angel of the church, wait, we're in chapter 2, right? We're in chapter 1. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto Him. Who's Him? Who's receiving this revelation? John, all right? Gave unto Him to show unto His servants things that must when come to pass. Shortly come to pass. That is key to understanding this book. Everything has to be remembered as shortly come to pass. And He sent and signified it by His angel unto His servant John. Another key part of this very first chapter is verse 8. Reminding us who Jesus is. Who is Jesus? Verse 8. Alpha and Omega. The very first letter of the Greek alphabet, the very last letter of the Greek alphabet. So what's He saying? I'm the first and the last. I'm the beginning and the end, as He'll say on down in verse 11. Saying, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. And whatever you see, do what?
Write in a book.
Write in a book. You're about to see things. You're about to see things, and when you see them, I want you to write these things down. And then I want you to do something with it. What does He say? Keep it to Himself? Send it to the 7 churches which are in Asia, unto Ephesus and Smyrna and Pergamos and unto Thyatira and Sardis and Philadelphia and Laodicea. He says, when you see the things that you see, I want you to take these things, write them down, and then send them to these 7 churches. Why would He say that?
Because there's something He wants them to know.
There's something He wants them to know. There's something vitally important to their salvation, to their lives, to their souls, to their financial well-being, to their physical well-being. He says, write this stuff down because these people need to know these things. Which is going to be chapter 2, or chapters 2 through 5. Chapters 2 through 5, we have the greetings to the 7 churches. All right, to the church at Ephesus. He says, write these things to the one that holds, Seth, the one that holds the 7 stars in his right hand, and who walked in the midst of the golden candlesticks. What was the problem with Ephesus? Or what was the good things about Ephesus? Either one. Good or bad?
They left their first love.
They left their first love. What were some bad things about Ephesus? What were some bad things about Ephesus? Or good things about Ephesus?
They hated the deeds of the Nicolaitans.
Alright, they hated the deeds of the Nicolaitans. Alcoholism. Just enjoy yourself. Enjoy everything. Enjoy all the pleasures of life. Just do whatever you want. So they didn't like the deeds of the Nicolaitans. What else?
They persevered, had patience.
They persevered. They had patience. When it come to false doctrine, how did they respond?
They called the people out on it.
They called them out on it. They said, we will not stand for false doctrine. But He says you left your first love. What happened? What had happened to them? Basically. They stood against false doctrine, but they left their first love. How does that happen?
They became lukewarm.
They basically became lukewarm. They left their first love, but they had the doctrine, so they knew the letter, but didn't know the writer.
Right.
That was their problem. They knew what it said, but didn't know God. They knew what the words meant, but they didn't know the one writing. So Ephesus had a heart problem.
That's right.
All right, what about Pergamos? He said these things to the church at Pergamos. These things says the one with the sharp sword. Who is that? Who's the one with the sharp sword?
Jesus.
Jesus, all right. What does he say to Pergamos? He starts this sentence out the same way he starts out every sentence to every church.
I know.
I know. Why is that important? What's he trying to impress upon these congregations?
He know their works.
He knows their works. He knows what they do. He knows what they don't do. He knows each one of them individually. He knows who they are. He knows their hearts. He says, I know you, and I know what you're doing, and I know what you're not doing.
That's right.
And that should humble all of us, shouldn't it?
Yep.
If he can look at me and say, I know what you do, I know what you don't do, I know when you use your time wisely, and I know when you use your time foolishly.
Right.
That should humble us. So this is what he's saying to the church of Pergamos. I know thy works. And he says something about where they live. What does that say? Verse 13, something about where they live.
Where Satan's throne is.
So obviously, there in Pergamos, is there a little bit of wicked or a whole lot of wicked going on?
A whole lot.
There's a whole lot of wicked. He said Satan's seat, Satan's throne, his capital, his Washington, D.C. is right there with you. So do you think they're going to have a little bit of a difficult time being faithful? Think they're going to be persecuted a little bit? Go through some difficult times? Yes, they're going to go through some very rough times.
Yeah.
The overlying theme to most of these congregations is going to be what? To every one of them.
Be strong and stay in what they.
Be strong. Why do they need to be strong?
Because trials and tribulations are coming.
Trials and tribulation and persecutions and fightings and strife and punishment and attacks and insults and everything you can imagine is coming your way. But if you're faithful unto death, guess what I'll give you?
Crown of life.
Crown of life. That's the overlying message to the churches. Bad things are coming. Terrible things are coming. You're going to be killed. You're going to be attacked. You're going to be stolen. You're going to have your businesses destroyed. Your families torn apart. People are going to start hating each other that are related. So he's saying there's lots of bad things coming. And these things are out of your control. How do you like to have somebody tell you that something is outside of your control? There's something going to happen and you can't do anything about it. It's just going to happen. I don't like that. It drives me crazy. I like to know what's going on and how I can keep it in this nice little box. But I got a lesson in that this week. My cell phone is broken and there's nothing I can do about it until Verizon sends me a new phone. So I can't get your calls or your text messages. And I realized within that first hour how addicted I am to my telephone. I use it for everything, for my internet, for my cell phones, for my emails, for Facebook, for everything. It's right there. More information than they have when they went to the moon, we have right here. And when it broke, there was nothing I could do about it.
Yeah.
I couldn't fix it. I couldn't seal it back up. Nothing.
Yeah.
I just had to deal with it. Go ahead, brother.
One of the great things about the church of Pergamos, he said that they had not denied the faith. That's a great compliment.
Yes, sir.
You have not denied the faith, even in the midst of all of the sin and false teaching, the false teachings that were going on. This church had not denied the faith. And I think when we hold on to the faith of God, then God can work with us.
Right.
I mean, we have shortcomings, but God can work with us. I mean, but if you deny the faith, it's not too much He can work with.
Right, right. As we looked at, whenever he talks about someone who leaves him, he says, everything that you've done, all the things that you've done for me beforehand, all the good that you did, it's all vain. And what's the word vain mean?
for
Empty.
nothing.
Empty, worthless.
No bad.
He said, all the good stuff you used to do for me is now worthless. What good was it? What good is it if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul?
Right.
All that stuff is worthless. It can't help you out in the end. So that's a really good point. So he goes through all the different things, all the different people that are going to be attacking them.
Yeah.
The Romans. How did the Romans view Christianity?
Started silly.
Silly. They viewed Christianity as silly at the very beginning. To them, they couldn't understand. Wait a minute. So your God died. Let us crucify him and be put in the grave. They couldn't understand that. They couldn't wrap their mind around that. Because what were their gods like?
Powerful. Huge.
Big, powerful, warring swords and shields and flames, just destroying anybody that come in contact with them.
That's right.
That's how they viewed God, or their gods. So to say to a Roman, our God willingly died for us, that didn't make sense to them. How would the Muslims who begin to rise up at this point, how would they look at Christianity?
Weak.
Weak.
That's the way the Romans looked at it.
Because God's message was to go and teach people, but you can't do what?
Harm them, kill them,
You can't force them. You can't make them. You can't do it by brute force. You can't beat them into submission and say, okay, you have to believe the truth. That's not the message of the cross.
That's right.
But in Islam, is that the message?
Yeah. It can
Yes.
be.
Anyway,
Yeah.
however you can get them, that's how you get them. If you have to deceive them, if you have to hurt them or threaten them, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
How did the Judaizers look at Christianity?
Hogwash, because they liked their position elevated like they were.
They love their position. They love to be seen. They said, we're already in favor of the Romans. The Romans don't necessarily hate us, but we can get them to hate the Christians.
Yeah.
Because the Christians have declared Christ is what?
King.
King. And we say there's no king but
Caesar.
Caesar. Did they try to win some of the Christians back? Yeah. They said, hey, how can we cause trouble? How can we cause strife and try to get some of these people back into Judaism? How can we make them go backwards? So you had the Judaizers, you had the Romans, you had Islam, so you have the Middle East, Europe, and parts of Middle Asia. Everywhere that we knew of was controlled by any one of these groups. So what was your life like as a Christian?
Terrified.
Terrifying. Terrifying. And if all this is going on, do you need a little bit of some comforting good news? You ever have a day you just needed some good news?
Oh, yeah.
Well, he's writing them some good news. He's saying, look, there's some bad things that are going to happen to you. Remember these words, because this isn't the end. And there's a place that's going to be far better than what you're looking at here. So he's going through and telling them all the different things. Would there have been a challenge for Christians then to be faithful, as he said a minute ago, not forsaking the faith? Would that have been difficult back then for them, to see your best friend taken away?
Yeah.
Not try to alter it just a little bit, as you see people do today. We talked a few weeks ago about some major shifts that are happening in quote-unquote Christianity. Does anybody remember what those were? Some major denominational preachers saying some very unbelievable things, even for them.
You don't.
Women preaching.
Not just that.
You don't have to believe in Jesus or even God to go to heaven.
They said you don't have to believe in Jesus or even God to go to heaven. Anyone remember who either one of them were?
That's Pope.
One was Pope.
One was the Pope. Who was the other one? Actually, there's three of them. Billy Graham. Who was the third one?
Probably that Joel Osteen.
Joel
When he
Osteen.
died.
So you're hitting three very influential people in our society that are saying, It's not that big of a deal. It's not that important. If you just believe there's could be something, then you'll be saved in your faith that there could be something. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That goes against everything these people were going through. It makes what they're doing for nothing if you say that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because if they're saying that, then you can say, well, the Romans believed there were gods. So we could say they're saved, they're fine. Well, Islam believes there is a God, so we could say they're fine. So what was their persecution for if what they're saying is true?
That's true.
Go ahead.
If these churches didn't continue in the works that were the right thing, but just still believe, faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
Faith without works is dead. And that's, I guess, where perhaps the Pope is getting his statement, because he says, as long as you do good works, no matter what you believe, go to heaven. But he leaves out something. While faith without works is dead, works without faith is also what? Dead.
Just
What
ask
good
Cornelius.
does works do without faith?
Just ask Cornelius. For all the good that he did, he still had to send for Peter to find out what he needed to do.
Right.
The
Absolutely.
Bible said he was a good man and contributed alms and spoke really highly of him.
And there was still something he needed to do.
Right.
That's a very good point.
Yes.
All right, so we go through all the different things that the churches were going through, and we can relate them to the different things that the churches today are going through. Faithful congregations are being pulled off into craziness, into madness. Where does all that start? One word, usually.
False teaching.
Sir?
False teaching.
False teaching? Yes, sir. But I think a lot of it boils down to fear. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
I don't want someone to say this about me. I don't want to be known as the person over there. I don't want to be associated with that mentality.
I don't want to offend someone.
I don't want to offend someone. I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. I don't want to make someone feel bad. I don't want to feel different. That's a big one. No one likes to feel different. No one likes to be singled out. But one thing he called us was what kind of a people? Peculiar. What does that word mean?
Different.
Different. If you say someone's peculiar, you're not usually saying, oh, they're just like me. There's something different about them. They stand out. So for us to be peculiar, we have to stand out. If we're blending in, something's not right.
That's true.
If someone cannot tell the difference between us and the world, we're not doing something correctly.
The salt's not salty anymore.
What?
If the salt's not salty anymore, it's not salt.
Right. Doesn't do any good.
Come in. Another thing is when it came to one's family, sometimes you could even lose your family or your family would disown you if you became a Christian.
Right.
And so there were a lot of ways that the Christians were suffering. And there were a lot of temptations and a lot of reasons for them to turn away from Christ if they were not grounded. That's why the Bible teaches us to be grounded and rooted. I mean, you can't make it just being a surface Christian because there's so many waves that can come along. You know, like we saw the water on the ground, it just, if you get it its way, it'll sweep you away. So these persecutions and false teachings can so easily sweep us away if we're not rooted and grounded in the Lord.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the guys that I graduated with, his family came over here from Ireland. They had generations traced and traced and traced in Catholicism, going way back. However, when he obeyed the gospel,
It is on.
disowned. Don't come home for the holidays. We don't want to see you.
That's wrong.
Don't call us. Don't text us. Don't email us. We don't want to see you anymore. We don't want to see your children. They didn't want to see their own grandchildren.
No, that's saying,
They said, we have nothing more to do with you.
cut him off.
Completely.
That's bad.
Now that's a scary thought. You're not even allowed to say hi.
So that's the, you know, when we become a member of the Lord's church. You know, that's really a giant step.
Absolutely. And you think about the very first New Testament Christians, the very first ones, when they left Judaism and became New Testament Christians, everyone they knew and everyone they were related to, for the most part, were still what?
Jews.
And how did the Jews view Christianity?
Not well.
And so what did they have to admit? If my family's going to stay there, every single one of my family members is
Condemned.
everybody I know, everyone I grew up with. They're going to have to say, is lost. That's one of the biggest arguments someone says today about baptism, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, if baptism is essential, what if this person is not? That means so-and-so was... They had their entire family reject them. That still happens today.
Yeah.
That's one of the most difficult times for a new Christian, isn't it?
It is.
The day, the moment you become a New Testament Christian, everyone and their brother is trying to pull you back into the world.
That's right.
That's one of the most difficult days for a New Testament Christian.
And if I can make one other point, that is one of the reasons why there are so many innovators and innovative teaching regarding the church today and regarding Christ. And so many people, you know, they don't want to stick to the Bible, but they want to do new stuff, and then they want to try to force it on those who know better. And so we have to really be strong to say we're not going down that road.
Right.
And then, you know, and then some of the change agents will say that, you know, it's a matter of judgment, but then when you hear them preach, they'll preach it like it's doctrinal, and you have to accept it. And if you don't accept it, then, you know, you're not mainstream. And when they're the ones that are not mainstream, because they're the ones that left the faith. And the way I look at that is this: if what they're saying is true now, with all of the scholarly men that we've had in the church, surely they would have come across some of the things that they're trying to tell us we need to follow today.
And there are certain things, you know, that while they may not be wrong at the face, they're stepping stones to wrong.
Yeah, they lead you away from
And that a
Christ.
lot of people don't see. There are certain things that are definitely stepping stones. If you look, there are usually certain patterns that fall right after each other.
Correct.
Just what he was saying is people try to make changes in the church. We have to remember too that these changes, they don't happen overnight. You know, it's gradual over time. And as people, you know, they'll push the envelope just a little bit, and then they'll back off a little bit, and then let people have a chance to accept that. And then once people have accepted, you know, a praise group, the next thing you know, well now then they're having life groups. Now they're having the praise group up front performing, or, you know, it goes on, but it's gradual. And there's a saying that